Hello, and welcome to the Skill Shift Project, the podcast where we dive into the skills and trends shaping the workplace of tomorrow. I'm your host, Donald Macintyre. Today, we're talking about a skill that's driving decisions across industries, data analytics. As the world becomes more interconnected and tech-driven, data analytics is emerging as a fundamental skill for businesses large and small. Joining us today is Merlin Roberts, a seasoned data analyst with 25 years experience in the industry and currently the principal consultant at RDI Consulting Services. Welcome, Merlin.
Thank you so much for having me, Donald. It's great to be here today.
Great to have you. Let's jump right in. For listeners who may not be familiar, what exactly is data analytics?
Great starting question. Data analytics is a broad term that can branch into a few different areas, but to try to characterize it at a general level, I would describe it as the mining, the aggregation, and the visualization of data to generate actionable business insights. Over the last 20 or so years, the capability and technology have accelerated to the point where it's now a key piece of how businesses work in doing a variety of different things. It's for taking information, lots of information, lines of data, ones and zeros, and it's mining that information, it's aggregating and summarizing that information, and then it's presenting that information and using the presentation to find interesting insights and trends and things that can be actioned from a business perspective that you would not see at the low level of data information that we're talking about.
So it's taking all the data your company generates and digging into it and finding trends, things, information or data that will be useful to your business. The idea is to find something that helps the business.
So the really key part of it is not data analytics for the sake of data analytics. The key reason for it is analytics that help to uncover business insights and actionable areas that otherwise would not be visible or would not be easy to uncover.
So I think you're kind of answering the question, why is it so important today?
Yeah, so over the last 20 years, over the last at least 20 years, and increasingly so as we get to more recent times and where we are today and modern day, the enablement provided by new technologies, different capabilities that have grown in people and in businesses, the discipline of data analytics has become a true enabler. It's no longer a niche back office kind of function that applies to certain industries. It's now a core capability, becoming a core capability, absolutely.
Well, when I hear data analytics and the data analytics guy, I think of somebody in a small room at the back of the building you maybe call every once in a while when you've got a problem. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah, there may still be that person in the back office that wears a white coat that does, deep data mining and predictive modeling and things like that, Donald. But the reality is, because of the breadth of data analytics, it lends itself on one end to very deep technical data mining, and on the other end to a very business-friendly, understandable communication and consumption of business insights to drive actions. It's a broad-reaching family. It includes a lot of terms that you've probably heard out there, things like business intelligence, artificial intelligence or AI, machine learning, and just straight data analysis. It's a family of things that come together under the overall discipline of analytics.
So where are the industries that we're seeing the biggest demand for this, and why?
Yeah, It's another good question, and I do have some examples to share with you as well, if you care for that. The other change over the last 20 years I was mentioning is it's no longer a niche thing. It's no longer, for example, statistical modeling that applies to cancer research, which has always been a very kind of good staple for what today we call data analytics and machine learning. Back then, it was called statistical analysis for research purposes for cancer. It's now proliferated. We're talking about financial services, manufacturing, retail, energy, governmental sectors, non-profits. I can't think of an industry that would not have an actionable, viable area to leverage data for data analytics purposes.
What about somebody in a smaller institution or even a smaller business? Is it being used in those kind of smaller institutions and companies? And how would you use it if you were, let's say, running a bakery?
Yeah, it's small, medium, and large enterprises. It doesn't have to be a global institution. It doesn't have to be, a large corporate institution for that. It really applies to any organization or any operation. It could be an association that has information, otherwise referred to here as data, on its operations, its customers, its transactions. Right there, you have an ability to analyze, aggregate, trend, visualize, and uncover potentially transformational insights, including for a bakery.
So if you're a bakery, can you give me an example? You notice that people really love the new Korean style croissant you've introduced. You've got 10 stores in Vancouver. What would you be looking for? What would you do with that?
The first thing is, how did you notice that? Data analytics is one way that you might notice that in the
first place.
You might not otherwise realize that. You might be relying on word of mouth from the people that operate in your bakery, that tell you the things that they believe are selling the best, or believe are most popular, or believe are those higher value purchases that have been made by customers. Data analytics can provide you with objective, either corroborating or unexpected insights into that. So the very baseline of this is analytics can help to start to answer those questions, as opposed to help you to validate things that you think may be true, even for a bakery.
So somebody's own bias might incline them to suggest that the vanilla donuts are selling better just because they happen to notice they haven't done a kind of scientific analysis of that. You then look at the numbers, you might find out that that's the case, or you might find out that, in fact, no, that it's a different item.
For sure. You might find out that those particular donuts they're great on Saturdays when people are out in the afternoon. That the thing that people buy on a most consistent basis are those boring old breakfast muffins.
It's something that large organizations are using and small ones can use. Is it confined to a certain geography? Is there a difference between doing data analysis in New York and doing it in Cape Town, for example?
Well, the semantic language of the area would definitely be different. If you're in an English speaking or a non-English speaking, using your Korean example, the language would be different. The core of data is its records. It's generally records, transactional records, customer records, account records, things like that, that are classified. And there are descriptive things. So, what's the type of product in a bakery? That would be in the language in the country that the bakery operates in. But at the very core of it, when you're looking at volume, so quantities of things, when you're looking at values of things, we're talking about numbers. We're talking about ones and zeros, and we're talking about dollars and cents, or maybe non-dollars and cents in different currencies. So the very core of what you're analyzing and aggregating when we talk about data is absolutely something that transcends regions and geographies.
So it's a universal language because it's about math and science, I guess, computer science.
Well, the discipline of it, the capabilities we're talking about are absolutely universal and global, for sure.
So you're in the business and you're tasked with analyzing the data, and you come up with some really interesting insights about those donuts. Then you've got to go to the regional manager and explain them. How do you go from that complex analysis that you've done with your data to putting that into terms that a non-expert can understand, or how do you turn it into insights that a company CEO might want to act on?
It's another excellent question. And there are two areas that I'd like to draw your attention to in addressing that. The first one is similar to the point that I tried to make previously on not doing data analysis or analytics for the sake of it, but having an endpoint, a question or a problem or a reason that you're trying to use data to answer. So this is not just finding some coherence in a drift of data we're talking about. This is one of the core pieces in the approach to good, mature data analytics capabilities. That would be my first point here. The other point here is related. So at the core of your problem or your question, it's unlikely to be a technical question. It's probably going to be a very non-data, non-technical question like, do we have the right products and services? Are our customers responding better to us than they used to? Very, very approachable questions like that. In answering those questions, and I think maybe this is core to your question, Donald, this is where data visualization can be a very powerful tool. So the aggregation of records, let's just say the bakery has 10,000 sales over the course of a year. Data visualization is not presenting which one of those 10,000 sales or showing 10,000 records and explaining the rigor and how it was brought together using a certain technology. Data visualization is showing different views of the sales of those 10,000 transactions and the pieces of those views that matter and that can be actioned. So there is a certain artisanship to this as well, in being able to find the right insights from the aggregated charts and trends and outlier identification, other things like that. It's very broad, and communicate them in a succinct way that provide the message to answer that question that we spoke about a few moments ago, or to try to maybe not answer it squarely, but to help to address the question and add some insight that maybe cultivates the question to be a bit more nuanced, perhaps.
Well, that's interesting because you earlier said it's essentially a universal language like math or science, but you're suggesting it actually has a element of art or artisanship. Can you talk a bit more about that? Because I think in terms of the skills of data, someone in data analytics needs, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it really is. That there are my attempts to distill this down would be to look at, there's something referred to as the analytics continuum, and it goes from, I wouldn't explain the whole continuum, but the parts of it are descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. So descriptive is really looking into the past. It's black and white. It's what happened in the past. Analysis, diagnostic analytics, is trying to dig into why those things happened in the past. What were some of maybe the causal reasons, or what were some of the attributes? What were the things that might have been true or not true that helped to provide context on the things that happened in the past? That's very different from black and white explaining what happened in the past. Now you get into the more forward-looking, the more predictive, the more prescriptive. And when you're using now more advanced analytics techniques, perhaps, that you wouldn't present the details of to a senior executive audience or your aunt in the Hebrides, there's some ambiguity. you might not know. Well, you probably don't know what's going to happen in the future, just like you don't know for sure what the weather's going to be like tomorrow.
It's
So,
much harder to, yeah, predicting the past is easier.
yeah, reporting the past is easier than predicting the future. So all of a sudden, we're into ambiguity, or into levels of ambiguity. Analytics can help if it's done right, and if it's done with rigor and it's done in an incremental way, can help to reduce levels of ambiguity, but without providing absolute certainty on what's going to happen in the future. If we all knew what the stock market was going to do tomorrow, then we probably wouldn't have jobs today. But we simply don't. So there's a level of, when we talk about data analytics, it's that broad encompassing family of pieces that I referred to earlier. The other aspect to it is there are often seas of data and dozens of different ways to present and aggregate and to visualize information and communicate it. The audience being the non-data analytics audience, or even the person that's developing this could be a senior manager and not necessarily the data scientist person in the white coat, needs to choose what to communicate and what to go to and what the narrative is that they're trying to address. So we are into a combination of, I'll call it art and science. The mechanics of how you've got there are quite scientific, quite mechanical, quite code-based, quite lines of data that have been summed up and counted and things like that and trended. But then the layer of communication, the layer of narrative, and especially in a forward-looking capacity, when you don't know what's going to happen, but you'd like to show some indication of what might happen, we're into the artistic space here, Donald.
Well, that ties nicely to my next question. A lot of industries are being hoovered up, or a lot of jobs are being hoovered up by AI, and people are being replaced, even in complex areas such as data analytics. You're suggesting, though, that there is a human element here that maybe the AI can't replace, and that possibly there's a scenario where AI becomes a tool that take away some of the more mundane parts of the data analytics profession, and that human element of discerning what the problem, what to look for, what it might mean, and then how to communicate it clearly might be important.
I think I am absolutely alluding to that. I would see AI, which is definitely in vogue right now in how it's been referenced, and other enabling technologies and capabilities. The predecessor to AI was generally referred to as machine learning. Predictive analytics became more prescriptive, and artificial intelligence, and now AI and automation and things like that. I would characterize them, it's possible it could evolve, but I would characterize them as they're evolving today as enabling technologies, not replacing technologies. The judgmental parts of what goes into let's say, what goes into a model, what data goes into a model. That's the AI is the recipient of the data that's gone into the model and being trained. I don't believe that the AI or the machine learning process knows whether there has been any bias or selection of the data that's been put into the model that it itself has been trained on.
Well, yeah, you're referring to, for example, data analytics that's used to, I don't know if profile is the right word, in criminal or police work, where you have a model that's been trained on data, and somehow it selects a certain nationality of people. If you go in and look at it, it turns out that the data had a bias, human introduced bias. So that's something the AI can't solve. It has to be a human who's able to evaluate what bias might be going into the data. Is that what you mean?
That's right. That's right. Or maybe let's perhaps go back to your bakery example, Donald. The historical data might suggest that these great Korean bagels are performing very well, and they're the thing to do, and we should keep doing that. And the model is trained on what's been good in the past, and the bakeries decided that we're going to focus on Korean donuts in the past. They've done that forever. So answering a business question now on should we do anything differently and feeding it information on what we've done in the past is going to probably provide you with a response or an output that says keep doing what you've done in the past, because that looks good based on what you've provided me as the input to my AI. So that's a statistical analysis kind of example of why the technology by itself is not necessarily going to replace the role of the data analytics professionals in the world. There are other examples. We spoke about data visualization before and choosing the selection of what you would like to present based on the information. But yeah, that would be another example for you, Donald.
So if I'm thinking, what's the world going to look like in 5 years? I've just come out of high school or university, and do I need to be learning to be a data analyst, or am I learning a somewhat different set of skills that lets me understand whether Merlin, the presentation you just gave me, is actually doing the right things? Do you choose the right problem, and is what you say the data is saying actually what it's saying?
A couple of points that I'd like to make there. The first one is, whilst data analytics is a recognized profession and discipline in itself, the big dynamic that has been evolving is data analytics capabilities without necessarily being a deep specialist. So you could be a graduate of a finance program or a marketing program or a communications program or another program I can't think of right now, an engineering program or a something program. Data analytics skills are going to be increasingly valuable to you in your professional career. I won't say completely regardless of what your professional career is, but across multiple different career paths. So this isn't about choosing data analytics. It's about data analytics skills that are going to help you in your chosen path. Would be my first point there.
And is that something that I can, for example, I'm sitting in engineering school, I want to build bridges and I have a certain amount of statistical math and so on I have to do. I'm not going to be a data analytics person. Am I being given those skills I need that you just described to give me the capability to kind of understand the data analytics more broadly?
I think that should be the way that it works. They're probably in that example of the engineering student.
Or if I'm in business, am I in business school? I'm not specialized in that, but am I being given sort of skills that would help me get the amount of knowledge that's going to be required to be successful?
So in business school or in the engineering example, it would be unlikely that the learning data analytics in this context would mean learning a deeply technical coding language and doing advanced machine learning models, for example. That would be the domain of more likely of a data analytics professional. But learning the fundamentals of data analytics, learning a process through which you can coherently analyze data to answer business questions and communicate information to provide provocative and revealing insights. Absolutely. These are not necessarily skills that require that deep technical as a prerequisite. So I would expect that. I would add as a case in point, my grade 10 son at his current high school, in their grade 10 mathematics, they're doing data analytics with analyzing financials and forecasting and financial literacy. They're learning this at the age of 15 years old in school, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that wasn't part of my education at the age of 15. So should we be seeing more of this? Are schools in general getting the message that this is becoming an essential skill, at least the ability to have a kind of a general understanding of data analytics?
It gradually seems to be finding its way into more mainstream education pathways at colleges, universities to a degree, in my understanding, and schools. It's one challenge that I've observed is it seems to it's what we're talking about today is almost data analytics as an add-on capability, in a career sense, as opposed to a core capability for everything that you do in your life.
Yeah.
Actually. And that's a really kind of salient message that I think is true and that should be understood. But the discipline of it, as far as the educational sector is concerned, it needs to have a home somewhere, if that makes sense. It needs to reside in a particular faculty. And which faculty is that? Does it reside in technology? Does it reside in marketing? Is it an appendage to finance? That there's still some uncertainty there. There isn't really an established home for this area of data analytics, in my understanding. And maybe it's my naivety only seeing certain institutions, but there is still some evolution taking place in that regard, Donald, I would say.
So what else should somebody who wants to get up to speed or stay up to speed in this area, what could they be doing? What advice would you have for them?
One piece of advice for listeners? Well, ultimately, it would be find people that are doing this data analytics area of capability and engaging in this in a real world business scenario day to day. Find some what we refer to here as use cases. That might be an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do. How would you do that? If you're working for an organization and it's large enough that there might be an area that's engaging in this, then maybe there's a secondment opportunity, maybe there's a voluntary opportunity here where you can start learning about this. There are certain courses, there's some great courses out there offered by many institutions, and some of them offer an aspect of immersion into business and actually consulting projects within businesses to provide, again, the exposure to see how people are doing this in the real world. What questions and problems are they trying to address? I won't speak to specific technologies because I think it transcends and there's lots of stuff out there. But I think that as many experiences as you can glean from what others are trying to do or have done in the past will be a great way to onboard. So that would be my recommendation.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Merlin, for sharing your insights with us today. I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot. I know I did. Before we wrap up, how can listeners connect with you or learn more about your work?
So, Donald, thanks again for having me. This has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate your time today. Listeners can find me on my LinkedIn profile under Merlin Roberts, and I look forward to connecting with you, answering questions, and maybe collaborating in the future.
Fantastic. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to this episode of the Skill Shift Project. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join us next time as we explore more skills in the workplace of tomorrow. So keep learning and keep growing. Bye for now.